Hello, everybody. I'm delighted today to have for our in conversation Bishop Philip Mount Stephen. Bishop Philip became Bishop of Truro Diocese last year. I was honoured enough to be invited to say a short poem at Philip's installation, which I always find very amusing. I remember when Dawn French was installed as the Chancellor of Falmouth University, she said, "Yes, installed like a fridge." And it's obviously a word kept for very important occasions. But Philip, welcome, and thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you. Yes, as I say, the installation was tail end of 2018. So you've been, I know you had plenty of Cornish connections before that, but you've enjoyed now 18 months or so of Cornwall. Living up to your expectations?
Well, it's been a strange time, hasn't it? Really. No, I mean, I love being in Cornwall. I feel very at home here. I do feel kind of reconnected with my family roots, and I think Cornwall is, it's a remarkable place, a really, really special place. I mean, I think maybe you could make too much of it, but you certainly shouldn't make too little of it. But, when you cross the Tamar, you are coming into a place that is culturally and historically, massively different, and that has made a massive contribution to the whole world. I delight in telling people, you remember the Bronze Age. Well, you don't remember it, but you've heard of it. No Cornish tin, no Bronze Age. Basically, I mean, that's just one example of Cornwall's incredible contribution to human values, really. And we need to
centre stage in history, and yet this sense of otherness. I think you're sort of saying at the same time, the sense of spirituality and.
That's right. In terms of spirituality, I mean, I think I think one of the sort of the continuums, as it were. We can talk about Cornwall has an incredible heritage in cultural creativity. You think about the whole, the artistic movement here, but that's all of a piece with an incredible heritage and history of pioneering industrial entrepreneurship as well. And yes, and I would say kind of spiritual entrepreneurship as well. People have been willing to, push the boundaries and discover and try new things. And that's what I think the Celtic saints were all about as well. So I want to see all those things are sort of tied up together in different manifestations of the same kind of questing, innovative spirit, which is something I think to rejoice in.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I love that word questing, because I do feel that, and I think that perhaps the latter half of the 20th century, Cornwall lost our mojo a little bit as the mines closed and entered a period of sort of mass, homogenized products, where you had to be near mass markets to get them produced. We weren't seen as having the skills or the scale to sort of do that. And I think this century's begun, before COVID, we already had this rebirth of interest in provenance and craft, and the whole sort of individual became the king or queen again with the internet. And I do think we're getting the confidence back where that questing, that entrepreneurial spirit, that sort of individuality is coming back to play again. And I think some of the, although it's a very sad time for many people at the moment, this crisis, and we're going to sadly see lots of people in need of your spiritual awareness when it comes to sort of job losses and business closures. But I do think that the general direction of the 21st century, we were already realising that things like our reliance on fossil fuels and the way we're polluting the planet and so on didn't sit comfortably with Cornwall's values, and I think we already were moving that way. And I hope this is a sort of catalyst for a bit of a greater speed of direction towards renewable energy and marine tech and agri-tech, this sort of thing.
Absolutely, and I do think I think one of the things that's really important is that Cornwall has a positive self-image and a positive estimate of its assets and its abilities. Really, I think it is very easy to tell a negative story about Cornwall, that it's not like it used to be, that kind of a story, and that's a very debilitating story, actually. And what we need to do, I think, without going, excessively down a route of kind of Cornish exceptionalism, I think we do have to say there is a distinct heritage, and we have distinct assets as well that we need to make the most of. Cornwall is a brand in a way that no other place really in this country is, and that's not just because of pasties or whatever. It is something to do with that whole heritage and culture, and our natural assets, both in terms of what that means for the hospitality and tourism industry, but also what it means for renewable energy. These are great things to be celebrated.
They really are, and I often refer to it when I'm out of Cornwall as the land of saints. So there is something around the sort of spirituality and the questing, the adventurous entrepreneurialism, which we were known for. And yes, looking back, some people look back on the sort of as if there was a choice between. I know I read an article once about I'd rather be poor than servile, as if the only two options were retain some sort of woe is us type of
exactly
rather than be renowned for our industry and our tourism.
It's not a win-win situation, is it? Either before
that's not. No, I did write in response to the saying these are not the only two options. It's a very poor lose-lose scenario. But I expect over the time that you've been back in Cornwall, you've already got your own favourite businesses. I mean, I know that there are a few products that I absolutely adore, and if I had to leave Cornwall again now, I'd want some Boddington strawberry conserve and some Tarquin's gin and things sent out after me. So have you got some favourites in that you've?
I'm very partial to a pint of tribute, though I do recognise other good Cornish brews are also available.
But no, that's a famous brand, and very sad news that Roger Ryman, the head brewer at St Austell, sadly died in May, and they've just announced the new head brewer who's a female, an old friend of Roger's. So that
good. You'll be in safe hands then.
That will live on. Yes, yeah.
So I won't get into the pasty wars as to which baker is best.
No, that we could do a separate one on that then. Yeah,
I love a good pasty.
We'll have a few pasties in hand and have another conversation about that. Whether the crimp should be on the top. Anyway, we'll leave that for the day. But I thought you'd be pleased that in National Mental Health Awareness Week this year, the theme was kindness, which is very much your stock in trade. And I did a piece for the organisers of the Cornwall end of Mental Health Awareness Week, and I wrote a piece for LinkedIn afterwards about, is kindness a business value? And I just wondered, with the values that we're talking about that Cornwall espouses better, whether we can move forward to a business era of more kindness to our fellow human beings and our planet and so on, and whether you thought that was, or whether that's business trying to culturally appropriate something else, Philip.
Oh God, no, absolutely. I think it's absolutely essential, and I think it's very interesting you mentioned that, because I do think, and I felt this quite a lot, I suppose, in recent years. I mean, not least, I suppose, the last few years, kind of politically in this country as well. That the kindness, simple kindness to one another, has been a really missing factor. I think kindness, in a way, is some of the sort of the oil that keeps the gearbox of society turning. I was thinking about this actually in terms of the whole the current sort of arguments that are going on about whether or not people should wear face masks because of the COVID-19 crisis. I mean, if it stops the spread of the disease, if it protects you and someone else, then why wouldn't you? But the counter argument has been, well, it impinges my personal freedom. Well, to my response to that is, it's not just about your personal freedom. It's about your responsibility to other people, and your responsibility to be kind to other people, to want the best for other people. You wear a face mask, you protect yourself, you protect other people. Why wouldn't you do that? And I think you can transfer that onto business actually in a way as well. Of course you can pursue a business model that says, you know, it's dog eat dog out there. It's the survival of the fittest. It's either me or him. I don't think actually that's how business contributes well to society at all. I think, you know, good business is about the free and fair exchange of goods and services between people in a way, we use the phrase win-win just now, in a way that is of mutual benefit to everyone else. I think back to the 1980s, and it was quite common then to hear business leaders say, well, you know, I have one responsibility, and that is to maximize the return for my company's shareholders. And I think, no, I just don't believe that. You know, shareholders are one lot of stakeholders. You've got employees, you have a responsibility to them, you have a responsibility to your customers, you have a responsibility to the wider society. And I would say it's perfectly possible to do right by all of those and to recognize those responsibilities. And not only is it perfectly possible to do that, I'd say, you know, it makes good business sense to do that. Keep your investors happy, keep your employees happy, keep your customers happy. By providing good goods and services to them, you're going to have a business that flourishes.
I'm absolutely convinced that you're right on that. The way that business is going to be conducted in the 21st century, under the glare of social media and everything that the internet's got, empowering the individual, it's so clear already that people want to buy from and they want to work for a business with some purpose, with some values, and therefore I don't think there's going to be that chasm which used to exist. You know, when I started my first business in the 80s, there was that feeling that it was sort of well, not exactly greed was good, but you know, the bottom line was the only criterion by which you were judged. I mean, I think, you know, there is a much better way to do business, a much more sustainable way to do business, and certainly a better way to do business in Cornwall that meets the sort of values and the psyche of Cornwall. I talked to somebody the other day about, you know, we knew that our reliance on fossil fuels was not the right way forever. And if Cornwall can take some leadership in some niches around renewable energy, that to me meets the public vision and the personal psyche of Cornish people. And I think that's where you get the national, if you can call it that, mojo back again to sort of really you know, demonstrate that we are all in this together.
It is all about, you know, actually treating other people as you would be dealt with yourself. It's about, you know, good neighborliness. It's about seeking the common good. I mean, you know, a frequently recurring word in the books behind me here would be the word covenant. You know, and clearly there is a contractual element to business, and rightly so. The kind of copper bottoms relationships, you know, their legal commitment to one another. But I think, you know, the idea of the concept of covenant takes things beyond that. It is about the kind of the commitment that we make to one another in society, and the commitment indeed that business makes with its customers with business, you know, etc. And it's that kind of thing, I think, that is deeply enriching of society, and that we need to maximize. And yeah, I think Cornwall should be a leader in that.
Yeah, I know one business leader who their headquarters is in Truro, but they've also got offices in London, Riyadh, Doha, and somebody else. Cornwall's the most difficult place to do business in the world, because if you screw up here, everybody knows about it. But conversely, if you do a good job here, you know, your reputation grows very quickly as well. That sort of, you know, that sort of holding our feet to the fire is a good quality to have. That, you know, if you don't do,
it does say something about Cornwall. It's partly a function of size, of course, but it does say something about Cornwall's relationality as well. You know, that,
yes,
a lot of stuff works on networks and relationships.
Yes, which has good and bad sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And do you think, what's your experience of this lockdown been? Do you think that this kindness is going to be helped by this lockdown? Have people been sort of kind? I mean, certainly there's been plenty of stories of, which I think is great, I'm sure, across the country, but Cornwall's particularly generous when it comes to charity. I think we're very generous of spirit, of kindness to neighbours and so on has been, whether that spreads into the wider business and...
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think there's always the question of, to what extent these things will endure. But I think, I mean, you and I are both involved in the Cornwall Community Foundation, and we're both well aware of how their kind of emergency appeal target was met and surpassed, very quickly. And that's because they're tapped into an awful lot of generosity in the wider community. One of the things that I did during lockdown was to spend time ringing people who are running various sorts of kind of community initiatives, community support initiatives of one sort or another, whether that be food banks, people working with the homeless, etc., etc., etc. And time again, the message I got was actually, we're not, the demand's there. The demand is significantly increased, but the supply is there as well, whether that's with the supply of food or whether that's the supply of volunteer help. And I think people did rally round, and I think there was a sense of the spirit of one and all being pretty strong here. I always think, I think it's part of my job actually to help, part of all of our job, but I do feel it for me that, part of my job is to help Cornwall, be its better self. And I don't want to sound too negative about it, but, to do this worst, I think Cornwall can be, introspective and parochial and, a bit resentful of the wider world. But at its best, I think Cornwall does have a broad perspective and is big-hearted and hopeful. And I think we need to keep those things front and centre as we go forward from this.
Yeah, indeed, and as I say, that's going to be challenged a little bit, I fear, with redundancies and business closures in the next couple of months. But I think we've got to, do what we can in positions where you are and where the Chamber of Commerce is to sort of, keep people positive, make sure they're doing all the practical steps, that there is kindness around them to help them through a difficult time, and that there's some feeling that Cornwall's direction of travel is right longer term. So hopefully we can see that without too many mental health issues and so on cropping up over the next couple of months.
I think you're right. I mean, I keep on saying to people, we're not through this. There's going to be more down the track, and we need to be. I mean, especially if there's a second wave and all the rest of it. So we need to keep those community values that have been to the fore. We need to keep them strong and recall one another to them, I think.
Indeed, and being a business person, I believe that this can be the catalyst for good things, but it needs people and a plan to make it come to life. So we do need to hang on to that with some some specific things done for. So that's sort of Cornwall's position. Now, as the Bishop of Truro, you were commissioned to write a report for the office, and this broadens the issue somewhat. I'm going to bring it back to where this might lead us in post-COVID world, which was surprising, I think, to many people, in that it identified that Christians around the world are the most what would you call it, terrorized or put upon or
discriminated against, marginalized, persecuted. It's a kind of continuum, really.
Yeah, no, it's pretty horrific, and obviously we've been told that obviously Boris Johnson a few weeks ago announced that the Department for International Development will be merged with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to try and unite our aid with our diplomacy. And I just wondered, there's obviously in the wake of diplomacy in the wake of aid, actually, I think probably more front of aid should be trade. And I just wondered what your feelings were, whether we should live in a world where the aid and diplomacy and our values led our international trade efforts, for example.
Yeah, I think it's. Let me say from the outset, I don't particularly want to comment on the business of the FCO and DFID merging. That's been contentious. There are a lot of the development charities really very unhappy about it. I mean, it's essentially it's a political call. I would be very concerned, I think, if the aid budget were simply instrumentalized and used. You don't see the world poor leveraged in the UK's better interests, if I can put it that way. I mean, one of the things that has encouraged me in recent days, just to take this from a different angle, is a week or so ago the Foreign Secretary announced the adoption of these so-called Magnitsky powers to sanction individuals who have been engaged in flagrant breaches of human rights around the world. And they've already announced those for some of the Burmese generals who've been instrumental in the appalling mistreatment of the Rohingya people. And Dominic Raab specifically said in the House of Commons that they would be continue to be willing to use these to sanction people who have been engaged in grievous abuses of freedom of religion or belief. And, that pleases me. At the same time, the government's been really quite upfront about saying that they will protect the rights of people in Hong Kong. I think all those messages are things that I welcome warmly, because I think what that says is, that this government will not do trade at any price. There are limits. There are values. I mean, one of my arguments in sort of pressing this freedom of religion or belief agenda, which incidentally I've been very clear needs to be pushed for people of all faiths and none. It's not about privileging Christians. But one of the arguments I've used is that actually countries which are plural, which are tolerant, which are diverse, are more stable. They're less of a security threat, and actually they're better places to do business with. Countries that dominate their minorities are often inherently unstable places. China looks like a sort of massive phenomenon. I think there are, any government that so desperately clings on to power and is so ruthless in its suppression of opposition. I want to say ultimately, what are you afraid of? Why are you holding on to this so tightly? And I don't believe actually that kind of position ultimately can endure. So as I say, good, plural, diverse, open societies. They're more stable, they're more secure, and they're better business partners.
Yeah, absolutely. No, beautifully put. I couldn't as a Chamber of Commerce person put it myself. I think your report for the FCO commented that you're a little bit questioning sometimes of third-party agencies and their lack of rigor when it came to giving out grants to organisations that hadn't passed any test of whether they marginalised people or tortured people. And I think that was and I think as a Chamber of Commerce, the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce is one of 53 that cover the whole of the UK, and then there are 47 accredited British chambers in key overseas markets, and they tend to be the ones where there's already somebody trodden the path and there is some stability and there is some track, and if not necessarily all of the values that we have been talking about today, at least some feeling that there's some understanding of what those values might be and should be. And I think for the same reason that we were talking about in a more local context, businesses need to be careful if they're doing business in countries with organizations, whether it's governments or foreign businesses that are not, well, if they're breaking all sorts of values, they are going to get caught out. Panorama or social media or somebody will catch them out, and then you've got a lot of explaining to do, I think. After
that's right, absolutely, and reputational risk is really important for for companies, and it's one of the things that will completely scupper them and drag them under.
Absolutely. So I think that there is a coming together, partly because of the greater scrutiny of the internet, I suppose, and partly, I hope, because there's a general recognition over the last 50 years that we're going to mess up our planet if we carry on in the way that we have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
That brings, I think, the spirituality and kindness and thought for one's neighbours and one's planet back into mainstream.
Transparency, accountability, social, environmental responsibility. It's all part of the package.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And are there any sort of further comments around what we as a local, either community, Cornwall, or as a local business community, that we can do to wave the flag or bang the drum harder for any of these things, do you think? I mean, if we believe what we say about Cornwall's way being actually a better way, how can we get the, I always often describe Cornwall as we're at the sharp end here, and what can we do? Where can we be the sharp end of the wedge for change?
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of things spring to mind. I mean, one is you and I both contributed to a publication whose name I'm racking my brains to remember, but it was basically a whole set of papers about what kind of Cornwall do we want? What does a healthy, sustainable future for Cornwall look like? Yeah. And I just want to say, I think it's fantastic that business leaders are contributing to that conversation. And because that hasn't always been the case. And as I say, I think a lot of what I'm saying here is that we do need to take a more integrated and more rounded approach to all of this that seeks the common good for all, and that sees business as integral to that. As I say, the free and fair exchange of goods and services is a positive benefit to all of society. It's not filthy lucre. It's not sort of dirty trade that we shouldn't really talk about. It's essential to how we live our human lives together. So that's one thing, and I think business's contribution to that conversation is really important, and I absolutely welcome that.
Good. I think business can be a force for good. I think
absolutely.
International trade. I mean, the old adage of give a man a fish and eat for a day, teach a man to fish and eat for life. I mean, that is there's so much that business can do for the planet.
Really, and then I think the other thing is that I always want to say that we need to think of Cornwall as not where land ends, but where good things begin. And you hinted at that. Just now. So, and it connects with that whole tradition of creativity, innovation, and enterprise. So I think corporately we can give ourselves to thinking together. What does good, value-rich business look like that makes positive contribution to society as a whole? And I think there is something about Cornwall, about it's kind of it sort of stands alone. The other side of the Tamar, we have this strong tradition of one and all. I think this is an opportunity to reshape society in a way, and I think asking ourselves together, what does good look like for Cornwall, with business as an integral and a critical component of that. That's the kind of conversation that we need to have. What are good models of society? What are good models of business in society? And that's the kind of conversation I wanted to have, and I'm delighted to be part of, which is why I'm great to talk to you today.
Well, fantastic, and that's the sort of reason behind this, is to make sure that your values are wrapped into business's values, and that the one and all spirit of Cornwall does go forward, and we do regain our mojo as an innovative and entrepreneurial, I was going to say nation then, but place, and and you know, we do espouse these values and actually lead on some of these things. And I think with the, if one looks around at the, you know, the businesses that are emerging, driven by digital enablement, so coming out of the universities now, and you know, and some of them tapping into our mining and fishing and farming heritage, you know, and if we leaders in certain niches in agricultural technology, agri-tech, for example, then I think we can really get behind some of these values and be a nation that, a place that, you know, comes together again. But as soon as I hear myself saying that, I know that I don't want to sound glib in these tough times that we've got over the next 3 months.
Yeah, no, you're right, and we don't want to sound glib, but equally, you know, I think we have to have our hopes and our vision set high. Otherwise, you just get, you know, you get dragged down into the into the immediate
problems. Yes, yeah.
I mean, hope is really important. I think, you know, a lack of hope in a community is absolutely crippling. We need to keep our hopes set high in Cornwall, I think.
Yeah, great. Bishop Philip, thank you very much indeed for your time. That's been delightful, and I hope that we do, by these sort of in conversations, feel that we're bringing together the various strands of life in Cornwall. They've always been pretty close. We are a pretty unhierarchical place, but lovely to be able to spend some time with you, and thank you for your thoughts. And I hope that we can continue our relationship between the spiritual sides of Cornwall and the sort of well, commercial or you know, just business-like side of things that we find ourselves can. And I love your word quest. I hope we can all quest for a better future. Perhaps not as adventurous as some of those old dates, but still, we'll still plenty to do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kim. It's been great to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. See you soon.
See you.